morning. I'm Gary Banks, University of Virginia. Bit of a theoretical talk here to go about, what is IT, what is the it in IT today, and out there for you to think about. The structure we have here, obviously, I'm going to go ahead first, then we'll get John up here, and then I'll start off with a touch of a history. How did we get going on this talk, and then John will hopefully bring us home with some information helpful. My piece. My 15-20 minutes. I'll have. Why are we here? Why did I come up with this talk? Why did John come up with this talk? I'll give you a little history about what do I think the role is for IT and some other than IT in our institutions, law school, and I'll give a real brief our potential revised roles of IT people and non-IT law schools in particular. I've somewhat modified the talk after hearing, the all right. The genesis of where we're trying to get this is I've had law school, IT, I guess, for about a moment of reflection of, where have we been, where are we going, and how are things changing. And it was the year I was, in my mind, thinking of living dangerously. We started off last summer. A lot of schools had to deal with a lot of the security vulnerabilities. Where all these paranoid delusions that we had in 2000 were actually becoming reality for a lot of our students. And that was kind of a downer and a bummer. And I was like, geez, what a fun year we've had. Last year in CALI, there was the Harvard Business Review article that came out and said, IT doesn't really matter. It's turning out to be a commodity. We should be a bit behind the curve. We should be spending less and getting economies of scale and improving efficiencies. And I was like, now I'm sort of getting in that groove too, evolving to, or going to be out. And then I took a look in February as we were preparing for this talk or submitting a thing, and I was like, my big project grid, and it was like a lot of stuff that wasn't terribly exciting. I mean, it wasn't certainly inventive. It wasn't out there. I mean, I was improving the wireless to go from B to G, and we were doing some video streaming. A lot of work, and it was meaningful, but I looked at the big picture of what all my people were engaged in. It was, and what I meant by the obligations of due diligence. That really added to the legal education. Now spending more money that I didn't have before, just so people can turn on their computers, not bring everybody down. So I was like, okay. Stretched into, fun. The other piece I did when I was doing my backward looking and started in April, when I was like, okay, I got to pick up the theme here, or this is going to be a real fun with the talk. I went back, and it seemed to be there. The themes from CALI, going the distance, the virtual reality, the revolution. I mean, that's kind of upbeat. That's kind of forward-looking, and even though the dot-com bust had been going down, we were still ourselves up. And I give a couple of sessions I remember from those times, 2, 3 years, 4 years. Elmer did a little session 4 years ago. Hey, we want to know who we are. Who's a dean? Who's an assistant? Librarian. We're an up-and-coming group. We need to get to know each other. Vote. And I'm giving a Pablo. I mean, then next year he and Mitch Davis. Wow, CIOs were starting to pop up, or some serious IT leadership was at least proactive. Here we go, kind of. And I took a look back at the devil in the details. Well, now do okay. I understand. The key word really isn't the devil, meaning bad. But I was looking at the theme, and I was thinking it was the starting to focus in on the details, and I think it even comes back into the theme this year. I mean, this is really not looking forward. It's, okay. Obviously, from our talks we had done back a couple years ago, a wireless talk, because we had done wireless. A couple of talks for a couple of years about concluding how the wireless had been done and all that. But we were putting that away. Last year I did a talk that I did follow up on, which was I was taking a look at labs, and one of the premises and things I was going to do before last year was take a look how to work with students to do cool things like how to use iPod and how to use a PDA and how to use a cell phone for, let's have some fun kinds of things. Well, all that time got sucked up with just making them work. But anyway, so I came up with these thoughts, geez, what's our role left? What I mean by feeding the machine is down here now to buy the next generation of the server, buy more hard drive space. By feeding the machine is, are we here just to Soft or Oracle on the central grounds by the way they've defined and the way they had vision? Got me into the, what do I expect of IT? But wait a minute, maybe it's not, hopefully, just me. It's not just IT. It's what are my expectations of others? And maybe that's where we're going to have to take a look. Well, and see how they're thinking and viewing us differently. Last piece here, obviously, is a reference back to okay, we're getting good at dealing with IT, changing quickly. Absolutely moving right along if you want to treat them as a market. I mean, they get it fast as we do. But our institutions, as we've thought over the years, how are we going to keep up with things? Two of the how are they keeping up with it? I got in and I was trying to think of what models do we have here and how did I've got a couple of jokes here, see if they go okay. Fighter pilot of old, think World War II, Korea, maybe even Vietnam, and even up till today. How many fighter pilots does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer was one. Light bulb in the entire world revolves around them. And I was like, yeah, I used to think that way. I knew what was going to go on. I knew what was best. How do you know if there's a fighter pilot at the party? Don't worry, she'll tell you. Yeah. What's the difference between God and a fighter pilot? God doesn't have any omnipresent, here we go. That doesn't seem to be working anymore in today's world. I didn't find any help there. Currently, there's a joke going around now about fighter pilots or crews in general. As you know, you fly out here on a Boeing aircraft or whatever, and the crews are down. Taxi cab drivers, and the idea was, the ideal cockpit crew. Have we gone to this part where automation and technology has just made us a commodity? And the cockpit crew, they say, is a dog and the pilot. The pilot's there to feed the dog, and the dog's there to bite the pilot should he touch anything and goof it up. That's not really where we need to go. So I'm going to try to point out, I don't think we've gotten to the point where our mission is just to feed the machine, as I said. Expect to move along perhaps at the pace that we have. Accomplishing it and the ways buying projects or technologies or people that we hire within our IT department, we may need to take. So moving forward, I'll go a little bit quickly through this, but make a note that Pablo's conference materials are 2001 are still up on the web, and you can go get those. Gone through and identified 3 years ago what should a chief information IT self-evident, and I'm going to point out a couple that I think I'm going to modify and update. Obviously, we were trying to tell ourselves internally, not others in the law school, budgets. But keep in mind the idea of budgeting and how we think about budgets and what we did to do budgets. And think about being involved with the technology. Clearly, we thought we were supposed to be involved with technology. We're the CIO, IT. But this did not necessarily expand to others in the law school. We were developing a way of thinking and managing. I was not necessarily expecting this of anybody else. Part 2, he had 10 points. And the key phrase there, I hope to pull back around, is the last one, which is the long-term thinking. It was we were trying to get out when we were talking just about techies. Don't just think about the next quarter or the next semester. Trying to get ourselves to take at least to try to look into the future a couple of years out or 3 years out. So let me modify and add a couple of things kind of as an addendum. Adopt a best of strategy by investing in people. Working for ourselves as individual directors or individual hopefully been worrying about budgets and technologies and how does it fit into the mission. I don't know that I have not had enough time. If I've been trying to learn all that and figure all that, I've been trying to convey that to all the IT people. I haven't had as much time to go around to talk to a staff person in any department and say, hey, I want to let you know, have you thought about budget? Have you thought about improving things? Have you thought about how exams might run better in 2 years? Because I haven't had that kind of time in my program writing applications that I thought would help, but we have this notion where we a lot of other schools are doing this with tech advocates. They're not there just to be call centers like the customer service person. Whether they report to the IT department or they actually are the designated person who still is the career service. The person that you would bring in on a lunch and say, I'm thinking would be helpful, portals or blogs or whatever, and here's how I can imagine it might help you. Let me talk to you about it. And that's talking is expensive. Kind of a person or position or allocation of time is very expensive. But my idea is if IT is also working with HR, you can start to be hopefully working with HR to understand our techniques of, hi, I'm here to help you, and you're here to help me. Not necessarily from a staff person's point of view mean that they does that mean that they need to have more flexibility like your IT staff does to work on a Saturday because exams are held on a Saturday and they can be off on a Monday? That could run into a lot of problems with, if you have a union. That kind of professional responsibility to frontline staff. All of a sudden I'm thinking IT needs to a lot more and work tighter. That was not my IT mission to be that good with on base pay compensation, which is one-time remuneration, or whether they get substantively increased funding again. I expect IT, the one thing have not done well is this whole mindfulness. I've moved more towards this customer service, trying to understand needs and stuff like that. Got to be mindful and working with different departments that are one entity, not only that I serve, but that they're one entity within the whole world. Hard, I think, now to get that. finding most of my staff and students and faculty are actually coming up with really good ideas that make a lot of sense, that involve very reasonable technology that would be not difficult to deploy, but it just may not fit into the plan to do it at this time. The issue that they don't get to see, it's hard to tell somebody and work with them. Right, that's easy, that's fast. 70 people because we're going to do it. Right idea, it would have meant a whole lot, would have saved them a whole lot of stuff. We'd have appreciated it. Tech excitement is just a while for them to hold on. Part where I have not done a good job. I've been developing and I've been working with my IT staff about how to conduct themselves, think long term, think about budget, think about others first, set priorities. I've not seen that necessarily gets instilled about all the different constituents. Will happen. Problem. Problem is not a tech problem because it involved a piece of technology. More time than I ever have working. The whole idea of when you're rolling out technology, you guys know things will happen. Well, and you're going to make adjustments. A lot of people in the building, they're responsible for bringing information. Classroom or a notebook. I was there, and if I'm involved with it, they're going to look at me to see and observe everything. And the point is, I can't observe everything. A lot of people projects for buildings turn out, right? Done, and nobody's interested in the maintenance of half the classroom 5 years later with a new projector. The biggest one there, I would say, is the last one, and this one I picked up from construction, building and whatnot, which is to do a project over the long run and be success is good, but you've got quality, cost, and time. Construction managers always put it to me as any idiot. Project, any revised workflow, any different way of teaching. How to balance out all three. And most people can only get their heads around it. I want to do it now. I don't care about time, but they won't care about the quality of the product. Is it a step in the right direction? And oh, that's no problem. I've got the funds. I've got a project. I've got a center. I've got the $10,000. Not going to think that way. Idea, glad you got the money, but your timing is all off. I just shot him. Talk, they understand it. Brought something of value to them. Almost done here. So I came up with, in theory, and we'll get to the details. When you're trying to balance all these things out, you know, I can't work with everybody all the time. I just want to put out a couple of IT traits that we should keep an eye on the long run. Always look for radical things. We got to be able to experiment. Try to find technologies or projects that are flexible and scalable. Know when it's happened, and you can anticipate. Obviously, when I'm looking for different projects now, I'm not taking into account just the technology. Partner up within the school. People who understand and are willing to start to think about deploying technology and owning the projects and all those traditional things. Not going to be just this summer that they have to work on a system rollout. That they're going to have to work with the HR people, just like I'll work with them, but they're going to have to work with HR to say this is a different job. Are teaching different. Faculty are having more no office hours, but they're talking to students more at Sunday morning. O'clock in the afternoon. And the last one there is just buy-in, is the old-fashioned way of informed consent, talking to anybody. Decided mostly in my head or in the IT department, if you're taking a look at the whole picture, I would take a look at the communications. All about, we get to work with these people. We're IT. We're everywhere, right? Alumni, career services, applications to help classes go better for the faculty. We tried to always find technologies that we could use in more than one. But I have not been doing a job at all of making sure all those constituencies know to make these together and talk amongst themselves about how they're doing business rather than having to have me as the middle person. Oh, I see how you did a course homepage. Gee, I could do that with alumni, right? I could have the class of 1950 have a course homepage where the directors would post materials for everybody to get it off. Isn't that the same technology, Gary? And I would say, yes, I'm glad you saw a peer-to-peer way without me having to figure out, economies and efficiencies of scale. The technology then that comes out, if you get people working in the different peers, having to go through IT for economies of scale. Portal, a blog, or whatever technology I leverage it and have the different constituents starting to work with each other to roll out their own things, and I'm in structure mode rather than having videotaping or what you need is we had our communications that's doing that. Try to find time so that communications sees that they actually have a role not just in academic communications, but they can courtroom rather than me.
Kind of feel a need to first lay out a few things that are quite bizarre about myself, and lay out really how I got to where I am now, and understand the context in which I make decisions and how I analyze things in terms of technology. Out with kind of the educational background, I started out as a computer science stat major and then ended up with a graduate degree in criminology. My life, which you don't care about. But then when I left graduate school, I then went to a small liberal arts school and taught in a criminal justice program. Art school, and then decided that I wanted to go back into IT. So I went into IT, Washington and Lee. I went to Washington and Lee. I was the PC support guy. Out, I decided, okay, I need to either move or up in Washington and Lee. So I had a job offer. He then made me director of technology and research, allowed me to extend out of the technology arena, but I was still directing myself. Okay, I was, it was me. I was in the law school. I was the director, but I told myself, go change. So over time, the new dean really kind of heavily invested in technology, and we ended up 5 years. And a couple of years ago, I was promoted to associate dean for administration. Part involves institutional research facilities. But you'll learn that administration is everything that neither of the So it's kind of a strange career path. It's a strange background. I lay that out only for context so that everyone will understand how I analyze things and how I look at things. And if it's, I like doing this with Gary. Gary, very, very thoughtful and kind of I do. And I kind of am quite concerned that you talk about later. As I was researching this, I kind of started off with in the cause called New Computing in 1986. Where have we? What's happening in 1986? And then he went back, tried to assess what went on in the mid 80s, what went on in the 90s. Looked at the mid 80s, and this is really exactly when I got into the area, that it was really a kind of a hardware and infrastructure issue. Build the servers up. Rival the microcomputers that were raising up. Largely, however, the technology arena were controlled by people who had computer science degrees, metalheads who really kind of understood the hardware and understood law school administration deals. And the revolution of the distributed computing, we transitioned away from product selection and containment and towards pedagogy, policy, and user support. So that's kind of where Gary and I are, and we're trying to figure out what is the future role of IT. We also, during this period, have an incredible increase in demands and an incredible increase of staff. There was a recent CIO survey that came out that are still managing workload and avoiding burnout. Because depending on the institution you're at and the context in which you operate, technology fees have come along and infused a great deal of planning almost always pulls the technology people out along the side. Quite often that's tied to a campaign or a campaign. classroom upgrades and expansion of staff, there's been a fair amount of infusion of capital in IT. Now, I know many of you feel like you don't have enough. For us, at least, there's been a fair amount of infusion of capital in, but that creates then the stress because quite often that doesn't correspond. I can say that even though we've moved now, there's also been an evaluation of this expansion in the becoming more and more rapid. And really, the third point is really the point that Gary and I I think is the talk, is the diffusion of technology to every facet of law school operation. So it's no longer just you're putting out hardware on the desktop and you're making sure that that runs. It's now talking to your career services department to develop a web-based application for them to use. Talking to the admissions department, model financial aid, technology, and all of these things that are coming together, and that's why I call this the fusion of technology. We have a chance here to move how other administrators and how other offices within the law schools work, and I would suggest that that is the future direction of IT management. And also this notion of the professionalization of IT, the notion that IT directors and CIOs and at that level have really become much more professional in terms of the Along with that, however, has come what I call kind of mission creep and service creep. And I thought back, 10 years ago, I came to the law school in 1997. What is it that we're doing now that we weren't doing then? Partial list of things, and I'm sure learning management systems or wireless network, student laptops and the support associated with that. We had students bring in laptops, but they had them in their dorm room, but they were not. Public machines that they would use. Projects, as I mentioned. There are probably 15 or 20 databases project which we're working on currently. All the ideas about malware. All issues that we paid. Look at technology project management, and quite often, no matter what the facilities project is, you almost always get sucked into that facilities. Charge of facilities is because I got called in. They were going to start on May the 30th. I got called in on May the 15th. Called into a meeting, and the architect, I remember, was sitting there, and he goes, "You guys need in these classrooms." And the classrooms were all laid out, and they said, "What do you guys do?" Off the things that we needed. So he had to kind of go back and rework a lot of these plans to get all this. following year, we did the second phase of the renovation. All the information that's out there. Five years ago, when Technology Strategic Plan and the law Washington and Lee. Why is that? Because you have to, if you're an IT manager, you really have to think. Thought that way, or who've really quite as visible or diffuse as the change in technology management. As I said, Kenneth Green has now new computing revisited is a move away from a product-centered environment. How technology serves as a resource faculty and institutions, how we use technology to improve institutional service. Hardware you needed. I take that a little bit further and say, in fact, it's not just a service orientation, what I call a socio-cultural perspective. And again, coming out, but I think if you're going to be successful in law school and having a works at the highest level, you really have to understand, what sociologists would refer to as culture, the notion of attitudes, values, beliefs, norms, politics, institutions, goals at the very your decision. Direct the use of technology to support the institutional mission, values, and the objectives. So this is really what strategic planning is all about, right? What do you start out with in a strategic plan? And how it might use technology. So I would say you must adopt that in your kind of day-to-day operation. How that process works and put that to work for your. A couple of examples that I use from Washington and Lee is video conferencing, wireless control software. Not ever talking to anybody. In fact, tried to coordinate it with the undergraduate. But now there's a lot of things going on, as you all know, and there have been sessions about this. Washington and Lee adopt a video conferencing distance learning model. Us at Washington and Lee, understanding the helps guide making decisions about these two very, very complex. Not heavily invested in video. wireless control system. Another thing about faculty control. IT, the impact of success. I think in a lot of institutions, and strategic plans that are developed, you almost never see a strategic technology fees start to capital into some law schools, and also other revenue streams that you're able that, I think, will result, if it hasn't already in your institutions, power. Because technology, kind of in a social way, technology is a closed point in the exchange process. Most everybody has to come through you to get done. I'm not saying that use that power in a bad way, but I'm saying power in this in the department wants to match those alumni up, job in Seattle, so they want to go. Have to work through you and deal with it. Social scientists would say that the power exists at these and priorities that you have to make within the law. How you might increase the likelihood of success, and this is what I would say in terms of culture, politics, and the social institutions. Try to look forward to 3 to 5 years. Culture, you've heard about this. A couple of talks throughout the week that have looked at the notion of not good enough just to go with incremental inflection points, something that actually are these issues that other people are dealing with, and what our users are administering. Technology and in strategic planning. Especially with reference to technology. My assistant director has exactly. I see is happening is that the money we use in the capital budget process and through other processes like that are going at this other revenue stream, or you've got, I'm really concerned that at some point that you're involved in strategic plans. Why you have to be good at, project. What our staff are doing now. You tell me. I'm tired of hearing, I just need more staff. I just need allow us to do